Day 970. Number of kills through the Pegasus device 135. Number of rainbows presented 81. Number of opportunities to kill Rainbow Dash 0. Nearly 3 goddamn years is how long I've been stuck here. Stuck in a merciless hell of nightmares, murder, and corruption. I still had not forgotten my reason for coming to this factory, but it was slowly slipping away from my mind. The Rainbow Factory's dark atmosphere had slowly eaten at my mind, but had not faded away my goal yet. As for my sanity, I had completely lost every bit of reality, and even Scoots was no longer here. Only me, an absent-minded Pegasus. I had killed multiple Pegasi, whether they were failures or traitors, and it was eating at me like a parasite. Their screams were forever burned into my mind, as they died in their final moments. Their faces with streams of tears were plagued in my memory until the day I died, if I could ever die here in this hell. As for Absentia, she no longer trusted me after my first kill, and kept her distance. My only ally now was my greatest enemy, Rainbow Dash. I was going mad, and unless I got out soon, I would never escape the Rainbow Factory. I had to get out. One opportunity was all that I needed, but I was being watched by Rainbow Dash constantly on camera, so unless something happened fast, I would never get my chance to kill her. I had no allies that I could trust, so I had no help. I was literally alone in this factory, but was feared by the others, so I didn't have to worry about any pony trying to kill me again. The only pony that didn't fear me was Absentia, because she knew me. The amounts of spectra had returned to normal due to Absentia and I's suspicions being correct. The flying course was set up with small traps to make the participants fail on purpose, something that I found morbid and even pushed my temptation to kill Rainbow Dash even more. These acts of selfishness were the only thing keeping my goal from dissipating from my mind, so in other words, Rainbow Dash was digging her own grave. I just needed the perfect opportunity. I woke up in my custom room, much like Absentia's. The sound of the factory alarm erupted for about 15 seconds, until it finally faded to nothing, and was replaced with the sounds of the factory. I slipped on my uniform and proceeded to my morning exercises. After being promoted by Rainbow Dash, I quickly figured out that you must be fit if you plan to survive the factory. My legs and body had become much more fit over the past couple of years, and luckily for me, no pony had ever dared to mess with me. After my exercises were done, I made my way out of the room, out into the hall. Within the hall, Rainbow Dash's private room was in full view. It was a floor higher than the average Orchestrator's custom rooms. It was no easily accessible room, due to there being a keypad with a password that only Rainbow Dash knew. She was the only pony who could access the room from the outside and inside, because she never told any factory workers the password. That was only for her to know. I turned from the side of Rainbow Dash's custom room/office and made my way to the elevator at the end of the long hall. No pony within the hall said a word to me, knowing just how ruthless I was, and that I had a strong connection to Rainbow Dash. The feeling of being superior made me feel strong, as I stuck my hoof on the scanner, and after a series of beeping noises, the door slipped open. I stepped inside, pushed a button labeled F, and watched as the elevator door slipped shut. I closed my eyes, only to hear the elevator door cease from shutting. I quickly bolted my eyes open, noticing a hoof covered with black rubber sticking through the small opening of the elevator doors. The door slid back open, only to reveal an old face that I had seen in the factory before. It was Absentia, the first factory worker I had ever trusted, until my first kill in the factory changed all of that. She was giving me a severe look, making her way into the small space. The elevator door slid shut as the small elevator started to navigate to the factory floor, until Absentia stopped the elevator dead in its tracks, hitting a button on the keypad. I attempted to pull her hoof back until she looked at me.
"We need to talk,"
she spoke in a rough tone, holding her hoof in front of the keypad, making it impossible for me to resume the elevator's descent to the factory floor. "There's nothing to talk about," I stated, fighting to budge Absentia's hoof. Her hoof was locked in place, and I couldn't budge it, immediately causing me to get annoyed. Absentia had suddenly grown more aggressive.
Trust me, kid. Only I can move my hoof. You may be strong, but remember who has been here longer. You may scare the others, but you don't scare me.
Absentia was correct, so I pulled my hoof away from Absentia's. What do you want? I asked. Absentia just stared at me, expecting me to understand what she meant. Wanted to talk, and now you are silent. I don't speak eye language, Absentia, so talk! Absentia shook her head, continuing to stare at me.
Just listen to yourself, Scoots. You sound like a careless, selfish bitch. You sound just like Dash, and you know I'm right.
I had grown annoyed, continuing to stare at Absentia. Get to the point, I stated. I don't have time for small talk. Absentia hung her head.
You know, I thought you were different, and thought that maybe I found hope. But now I see that I found nothing but another lost hope. You've become a monster, and all it took was one kill. Just like Dash.
Oh, and like you are any different? You never even hesitated to become a worker for Dash. Only took her offer at that first request. Absentia's face fell to an angry tone as she looked me deep in the eyes.
You think I enjoy doing this? The only reason I took her offer was because I'd rather live to fight another day than give up like you. If you could have seen yourself that day when you tortured that worker with no mercy shown, you would have seen things in a whole different light.
I had a reason. That worker tried to kill me. They deserved every bit of torture they got. Absentia shook her head again.
Too bad that wasn't the worker who tried to kill you,
exclaimed Absentia. My heart dropped as Absentia's words echoed in my ears. What? I spoke in a low voice.
You heard me correct. That wasn't the worker who tried to kill you,
she exclaimed.
The only reason she wanted you to kill him was for the problem to be solved quickly and for free spectra. Therefore, you killed an innocent worker and in the end became a ruthless murderer.
Absentia lowered her hoof from the keypad, resuming the elevator's descent. It quickly came to a stop on the factory floor, the elevator doors opening, and Absentia leaving me to my own thoughts.
Think about it, Scoots,
stated Absentia as she walked off. I was left alone, feeling a sick feeling build up in my stomach. I didn't waste no time and rushed across the factory floor toward the mayor's bathroom. In the bathroom, I rushed into one of the stalls and stuck my muzzle into the toilet. A large amount of vomit escaped my body, falling into the porcelain bowl, as tears started to leak from my eye sockets. Absentia's words had made me feel sick to my stomach, and she was right. I had become a monster. I had become Rainbow Dash. I raised my head from the toilet and flushed all the stomach content away. I felt dizzy as I exited the stall. I stood in front of one of the mirrors looking at myself with disgust. I turned on the sink and filled my mouth with water, hoping to extinguish the taste of stomach acid from the inside of my mouth, spitting the water from my mouth. I shut off the water and lifted my head to the mirror, only to see my reflection as Rainbow Dash. The sight made me jump backwards as I quickly scurried out of the bathroom, back onto the factory floor. I rubbed my eyes, breathing heavily. I had to be imagining things. Was that reflection real? It might as well have been after what I just heard from Absentia. A cold sweat had started to drip from my forehead as I attempted to catch my breath. Calm down, I said to myself. You're just hallucinating things. It's not real. Just as I was about to take a deep breath, a familiar sound erupted from the factory floor. It was Orion's screams from when he was killed through the Pegasus device. I quickly looked around, but the factory floor was dead, and the Pegasus device was silent. The screams continued to echo throughout the open room, causing my head to spin. I had to be imagining things. This couldn't be real. Orion was dead. I had started to cry as I trotted away. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get off the factory floor. I trotted back to the elevator and didn't waste no time placing my hoof on the scanner. I had to get to the third floor where I could hopefully find some peace. My hoof struggled to hit any buttons, continuing to shake uncontrollably, and I could barely control myself. After multiple attempts, I finally managed to hit a button labeled 3 and was relieved when the door slid shut and the elevator proceeded to the third floor. my flank against the floor of the elevator, wiping some sweat away from my forehead, taking deep breaths. The elevator came to a stop on the 3rd floor, where I stepped out of the elevator and leaned against the wall, trying to calm myself down. It was quiet, which relieved me massively. Too much had happened too quickly for me to handle. I just needed to settle down for a second, take deep breaths, and try to forget what had just happened. I need to get a hold of myself, I said. Past is past, and it wasn't my fault. It was Rainbow Dash's fault. She tricked me. I've got to stick to my objective. Kill Rainbow Dash, then get out of here. That's all I've got to do. My breathing fell back to a normal pace as I focused on remembering my objective. I couldn't stay here for another week, month, or year. I had to get out before my objective was lost, and I became a part of the factory, unaware of my actions. I was glad that Absentia had reminded me of why I was here. Otherwise, I'd be falling deeper into the darkness of the factory. Yet another thing aroused from Absentia's words, the fact that the pony that had attempted to kill me 2 years ago was still around. Why had they not made another attempt? Suddenly, a nearby intercom erupted with the voice of Rainbow Dash.
All Orchestrators report to the meeting room. There will be an emergency meeting held in 20 minutes.
The message was short and bitter, and immediately made me question things. Why an emergency meeting? What could be so important that an emergency meeting would be held? A dark fear came over me, along with my instincts. Whatever Rainbow Dash was holding this meeting for could not be good. But I couldn't avoid it, otherwise I would face a trip through the Pegasus device. I stood back up and placed my hoof on the scanner, knowing that whatever I would encounter next was going to haunt me. The meeting room was crowded with separate orchestrators. Some I recognized, while others I had never seen before. I didn't waste no time in finding an open seat and took a seat. Every other orchestrator found a seat as well, including Absentia, who kept her distance from me. She sat in a chair on the far right side of the long table, avoiding any eye contact. Rainbow Dash was the last pony in the room, standing in front of a projector screen. I gulped as she started talking.
Thank you all for coming. Now, as all of you know, this factory has existed for countless decades, and in its time it has had its ups and downs due to its fair share of remedies. We are at suspicion that this will happen again, thanks to the small mishap from 3 years ago. Even though it was quickly resolved, that does not stop the fact that certain ponies tend to snap over time. So as a solution, security on the factory floor will be triple tenfold, meaning doors will only be accessible by security cards given to each worker. If you lose your card, you are to report to me for a new one. But know that it will not come without punishment. The worker that loses their cards will be forced to drink dirty spectra that we have stored in a secret area of the factory only I can access. I'm not going to lie, this spectra is going to make you sicker than a dog, but this punishment will assure you that you don't lose your card ever again. There will be no whining or complaining, otherwise you know what will happen. And
I kept quiet, trying to hold back the sick feeling building up inside of my stomach once again. The punishment was beyond morbid, and just plain sinister. Being forced to drink your own pony-kind spectra? Something that was once part of that Pegasus was just sickening, and nearly made me speak out. But I somehow managed to remain calm. The punishment wasn't just bothering me either, but every orchestrator. Could you blame them?
now, on to a new objective that is putting our factory in jeopardy. A few years ago, our spectra amounts were lower than ever before, and this problem is arousing once again. As a result of this rising problem, our outside contacts have devised an ingenious idea.
The sound of Rainbow Dash's voice was only obvious. It sounded evil, dark, and intimidating. Whatever was coming next could not be good. The room grew tense as Rainbow Dash spoke.
Why just stick the clouds still when we can be using the spectra of ponies all throughout Equestria? There's spectra for taking in Canterlot, Ponyville, Manhattan, and many other places throughout this world. Imagine it, my fellow Pegasi. A princess's spectra being extracted from the Pegasus device. It would make us gods. It would produce a rainbow unlike any other.
My eyes widened. Rainbow Dash had stooped to the lowest level. She planned to kill every pony throughout Equestria, all for the production of rainbows. My anger was at its highest peak as I clenched my hoof, trying to stay in my chair. I was so close to bursting until another voice spoke out from among the room.
Are you out of your mind, Dash?
Spoke the voice. The voice was Absentia's. She had burst, and her thin line of control over herself had snapped.
Well, getting a little overactive, are we, Absentia?
Stated Rainbow Dash, staring directly at Absentia.
I always knew you were ruthless, Dash. But this is just plain insane. I refuse to be any part of this plan. I'm done, you ungrateful bitch.
The entire room erupted with shock as my jaw dropped, knowing what was coming next.
So that's how you always looked at me, Absentia?
Asked Rainbow Dash.
You don't know how long I wanted to say that to you, you monster. And if any pony in this room is not a monster themselves, you'll stand up to the monster before you now.
I could see what Absentia was trying to do, and in my mind, I was hoping for something to happen. No pony even moved, except for Absentia, continuing her speech to motivate the others.
Look at what she's done to you. She has corrupted you, and if you continue this path of murder and darkness, she'll eventually force you to drink your own pony kind. Stand up, my fellow Pegasi, and we can end this nightmare.
I didn't know what to do. Rebel, or let Absentia die? The room was silent, until Rainbow Dash started to mock Absentia.
You really think they'll listen to you? You? These Pegasi lost their confidence long ago, Absentia. They would never turn against their superior Overmare.
Taunted Rainbow Dash. I wanted to join Absentia's attempt to rebel against Rainbow Dash, but I just remained in my seat. Just as I was about to give up fully, a voice aroused. But it wasn't Rainbow Dash or Absentia. It was an Orchestrator.
I would,
spoke the Orchestrator.
I came here 10 years ago. I was forced to kill my own sister. I killed her to save you from torturing her, Dash.
The Orchestrator was a young stallion with a blue coat and brown mane. The small tale of his form of initiation into the factory nearly made me shed a tear, as more of the Orchestrators joined in. After countless tales of the horrid acts each individual Orchestrator had to do to get to this point, every Orchestrator had joined in, except me. I could tell something wasn't right. Rainbow Dash would be cowering, knowing she was outnumbered, but she was as calm as can be. It wasn't time to play the ace.
See this, Dash? This is who we are. Show no mercy.
All the Pegasi lunged forward toward Rainbow Dash, but were quickly stopped by an electric field, shocking every single Orchestrator and dropping them like flies.
You fools! Did you really think you could get me that easily?
No responses came, as the 10 convulsing bodies of the Orchestrator sat upon the ground, unable to move. I still remained seated, watching the horror unfold before my eyes. Rainbow Dash approached Absentia first, and as a way to prevent any further horror, I turned my head away from the sight.
I knew of your pathetic plans ever since you became a worker, you piece of garbage. Now look at what you've done. You've cost the lives of 9 other Pegasi in one attempt. What do you have to say for this?
Absentia responded by spitting in Rainbow Dash's face, immediately causing Rainbow Dash to grow angry.
All I have to say is that I just freed 9 of your best workers. As for you, you can go to hell. You'll meet your match, and when you do, I hope they give you every bit of what you deserve.
Absentia laughed weakly, before Rainbow Dash silenced her with a hard punch to the face, knocking out Absentia. As for the other workers, they continued to convulse, as Rainbow Dash turned her attention to me.
Are you going to turn against me as well, worker?
She asked me. I was clearly in a bad spot to pull the ace right now, so I responded with the most selfish answer I could possibly have given. No, Dash, I spoke.
Good. Now help me clean up this mess. All you gotta do is snap their necks real quick, except for Absentia. I have plans for her.
I knew exactly what Rainbow Dash meant by plans. I rose from my chair, and one by one, put the remaining Pegasi out of their misery, snapping their necks. 9 sounds that I will never forget. At the Pegasus device, every worker of the facility was gathered at the base of the machine, awaiting the horde to come. Absentia was the last worker in the line of orchestrators I had to kill. I stood inside the operating room as Remodash spoke out.
Workers, within the past hour, some rebels decided to pull some dirty tricks against me, but once again failed. Let this be a lesson to all of you, that you shall meet this fate if you ever cross me. Worker, fire it up!
I followed Remodash's command and erupted the machine to life with a push of a button. At the base of the machine, the 9 dead workers were chained up in a line while Remodash continued to speak.
10 orchestrators pushed their luck too far, and as a message to all of you, you shall witness their deaths.
I raised the 9 dead bodies high above the machine. From tears being held back, I lowered the bodies into the grinding blades. The sound of their flesh and bones grinding against the blades made my stomach turn and my ears twitch. Their bodies grinded up easily as I watched the spectre tubes at the bottom fill with an array of colors, creating a putrid color. Suddenly, I remembered Remodash's mentioning of dirty spectra. Could that be? My heart dropped, now knowing that Remodash had somehow planned this. Next, I watched as my only ally in this entire factory was chained up. The sight of Absentia being chained up made the rest of the factory workers erupt in whispers, and even had some crying.
I am the only leader in this factory, workers, and this garbage thought she could overpower me. But just like the countless others who tried the same acts, she lost miserably. For her recklessness, she shall feel pain beyond anything she has ever felt before.
That was my cue, and even though I didn't want to do it, I had no choice. I lifted Absentia high above the blades, and slowly began to lower her, until I was stopped by Remodash.
Make her suffer! Don't go easy on her.
Remodash wanted me to kill her just like I did the first Pegasus I ever killed. A little bit of vomit escaped my stomach and rose into the back of my throat. I quickly swallowed the content back down, feeling the acid burn my throat.
Become a god!
Yelled Remodash as I lowered Absentia into the blades, immediately hearing her scream to be left the moment her back legs collided with the blade of the machine. I lowered her slowly, listening as Absentia screamed in massive pain, and her legs returned to nothing but mud. Below the machine, a separate spectrum tube filled with a brown color, while the others filled with a golden blonde color. The golden blonde spectrum blew so bright in the tube that it radiated from the bottom of the Pegasus device. I felt tears build up as I continued to lower Absentia, until her legs and hips were gone into the machine. I lifted Absentia back up from the blades, watching as additional blood and body parts fell from the inside of her body, as she hung from the chains. I couldn't help but cuss in my mind. Blood leached from Absentia's mouth, and her body fell to a pale light brown color. I couldn't watch this any longer, for I had seen enough already, and I was struggling to hold down the vomit building up inside of my stomach. Absentia had been here for 20 years, and had experienced enough mental and physical pain. It was too much, so I put Absentia to rest, and lowered the rest of her body to the machine. I'm sorry, I said, starting to cry. I am so sorry, Absentia. There was no holding it back now. Tears streamed from my eyes as the rest of Absentia's spectra was collected in the tubes below. Once the dirty deed was done, an unsatisfied Remodash rushed into the room, looking at me with disgust.
What sort of pathetic act was that? I said make her suffer! That was pathetic, and to top it all off, you were crying over non-superior's death! Are you a god, or are you not a god?
Remodash had my anger to a dangerous peak, and I was too upset to care anymore. I pulled my ace. I am no god, and neither are you! As I punched Remodash with all my anger, rage, and hate. My punch was strong enough to make Remodash go airborne over the control board and out of the glass window of the control room. She landed along the metal walkway, just inches from the entrance to the Pegasus device. She was completely surprised as I rushed out of the control room to her position. My hoofprint was completely visible on the side of her face as she looked at me, not with anger, but confusion.
Huh? Where am I?
Spoke Rainbow Dash, as I approached her and bucked her in the chin so hard that she fell backwards and her mane was finally caught by the blades.
Wait, please!
Pleaded Rainbow Dash, as I stood above her and landed countless punches to her face. Out of my assault, I noticed something about her. She was different. She wasn't the same Mare as before. I could see it in her eyes, but my anger was too high to stop throwing hoof after hoof into her face.
Please listen to me!
Pleaded Rainbow Dash, starting to shed tears.
Why should I listen to you?
I yelled.
You killed my friend! You forced me to kill an innocent worker! You killed me!
I landed another punch to her bloody face, not realizing what I had just said to her.
They made me do it! They made me do this! Please believe me, Scootaloo!
I stopped dead in my tracks. She knew who I was, but how?
Who's Scootaloo?
I lied.
I know it's you, Scoots. You're the only pony I know with a 3-tone scar on the right cheek, just like my cutie mark.
I lowered my fist. It was true. I had a 3-tone scar on my right cheek that I had obtained during a flying lesson with Rainbow Dash. It looked just like Rainbow Dash's cutie mark, excluding the cloud. I could tell something strange was going on, and that this wasn't the Rainbow Dash I had just saw moments ago.
Are you really Rainbow Dash? The real Rainbow Dash?
I asked.
It's me, Scoots. Cross my heart, hope to fly, stick a cupcake in my eye.
I remembered that phrase. It was a pinky promise, and this Rainbow Dash had just committed to one. Not to mention, she wasn't even attempting to fight back. Without a doubt, I knew that this wasn't the evil Rainbow Dash from before. But how could two versions of Rainbow Dash even exist? What was going on in this factory?
How can two versions of you exist?
I asked.
The real creators of the factory brought me here 30 years ago and forced me to take some sort of test. And in it, they gave me some sort of medication that turned out to be a trap. They took me into some part of the factory and performed all sorts of experiments on me that were designed to convert me into a monster. Rainbow Dash, you know as Rainbow Factory Dash, was created. And the creators of the factory told me that unless I followed their orders, they'd kill my family. So, to protect them, I forcefully took the medication that made me into the monster you knew me as.
I almost didn't want to believe her, but I remembered the first night I arrived here. I saw Absentia take some sort of pill, and it was designed to hide the horrible shit she was forced to do. I tried my hardest to remember what it looked like, then turned back to Rainbow Dash.
Is it a small red pill?
I asked her.
Yes, exactly.
She confirmed. I rose from off of Rainbow Dash, knowing she was telling the truth.
Let me help you up,
I said.
We can escape this factory together.
No, Scoots. You have to kill me before.
Rainbow Dash suddenly started to struggle, which I immediately recognized. The evil Rainbow Dash was taking over again.
Scoots, kill me before she takes over.
She pleaded. I knew what I had to do, so I quickly acted before Rainbow Factory Dash could manifest again.
I'll destroy the place that destroyed you, sister,
I said, starting to cry. I promise,
Thank you.
said Rainbow Dash, as she shed a single tear. I didn't hesitate and quickly pushed Rainbow Dash further into the blades, hearing the screams of both my sister and Rainbow Factory Dash erupt, as her head was grinded to nothing but spectra in the blades of the Pegasus device. Her head hung by a thread of flesh as I pushed her deeper and deeper into the blades, watching as 6 streams of spectra filled the tubes below. I pushed her deeper and deeper into the blades, making sure there was no possible way for the evil Rainbow Dash to return. Once I was sure Rainbow Factory Dash was gone, I wanted to cry. But that's not what my sister would have wanted. One objective was complete, and now it was time to destroy this place. It was time to end this nightmare forever.